Normally when it comes to men doing unrighteous things around me, for example, this guy, he's got a woman with him. She comes, spends every night with him here at the motel. And he comes down without her, sits down, and asks me if I'm single. He tells me, oh, he was looking at me and considering me when I first got here. And then he starts to proceed later in the day to sabotage his relationship with the woman in a very unrighteous way, taking her money, buying alcohol, spend the day in the park with people who are known to be loose women and drug addicts, stuff like that. And she's having a fit. Normally I would just sit there, I'd feel guilty, I'd feel dirty. I wouldn't say anything to the woman because they just hate you if you reveal to them that, their man is acting unrighteously towards them. Same thing with people. Guy noticed my foot had a cut on it, and he's concerned. He's like, well, of course I'm concerned. He only has one leg. And I'd feel all quiet, like, oh, I can't bash this guy. He's being sincere. He's caring. But I've been taking another ploy. And I hit the guy head on who decided to sabotage his relationship with his woman, thinking he might get with me. And I let her know what he had done. I figured, number one, I don't want him coming on to me or thinking he's got a chance with me after he did that to that woman. And number two, if she's choosing that kind of relationship, I don't need her for a friend coming to me like, oh, he did this to me, he did that to me. Well, you chose it. You set the standard for your relationship. You don't want to be hurt, so he does this to you in order to lie to yourself and say, oh, he didn't hurt me. You continue in a relationship where he's going to continue to do those things. And I don't need a friend like that. I don't need to be keeping other people's deep, dark secrets. And as for the guy with one leg, I just flat out told him, I said, yeah, you can be concerned about your foot. You have reason to. But you don't need to be concerned about mine. You don't need to be projecting fear into my foot, at my foot. And these men, they may not get vampiric towards me because I've expressed to them that I don't want it and I don't like it. But they would start becoming vampiric towards my dog instead. And I would normally cringe and get all self-conscious and insecure inside because I don't like it and they're just showing love to my dog and blah, blah, blah. No, they're still being vampiric and they don't need to use my dog as an outlet for their vampirism. And strangely enough, these are the same men who are now getting protective of me when another guy comes around and tries to do that same thing. It actually had the opposite effect of what I was imagining would happen. And I thought about it. One of the reasons why I got out of activism is I didn't want to have the back of somebody who didn't have their own back. And I failed to realize that, well, geez, maybe life is responding to me in the same way through these other people. I didn't have my own back. And so nobody else did either. But now I'm speaking up for myself. And people are speaking up and out for me. And it helps me to see that my perspective has value. And that I don't have to be insecure about it, or feel dirty, or nasty, or unloving, just because I speak up for myself. No matter what people say their intentions are. I turned off the TV because I realized, wow, we can sit here and we can focus on the positive things that we want to see. Our subconscious is where our instinct is responding and reacting constantly. And it's being pelted all day. Every other commercial's about some sort of medication, some sort of prescription. And it'll list off all kinds of side effects or death. And so we're pelted, even if we're tuned into a different channel that's all love and light and meditation music. Those frequencies are still hitting our body because they're everywhere. The power lines interfered with my reception on my cell phone. My cell phone, the airwaves for the cell phone, whatever, they interfere with other things. Like we're constantly being pelted in the subconscious. So our subconscious is always in fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why we can focus on the things that we want and still not get them if we aren't surrounding ourselves by supportive people. And if we want to be surrounded by supportive people, we've got to be supportive of ourselves. So as I said, I turned off the TV and started listening to YouTube music that I like. And a Viking song comes on. My mother told me. And of course it comes out in my brain. My mother told me I was going to grow up and be a loser. My mother told me I was greasy, nasty, filthy. So I go back in my childhood and I try and find a soundtrack from somebody else, because I don't want that message living there. Now, I come out strong at the end of this. Just going to take some tears to get through it. What my father did was he grabbed my breast, looked me in the eye, told him I'll tell Mom. He says, good, tell her. Well, the reason he wanted me to tell her is because he wanted that divorce. The Catholic Church wouldn't allow for the divorce unless there was sexual impropriety. And so they both got what they wanted. I told my mother, and she said, good, I was going to divorce him anyways. Now the church will grant me the divorce. She blackmailed him said, I will drag Stacy into court and have her testify about how you've been molesting her if you don't give me what I want in the divorce. So she made out in the divorce. But afterwards, they wanted to have sex together again. So they told the family I had lied about my father, that they had caught me in bed with my boyfriend, and that's why I had lied. So, for me to look to my father for a soundtrack is hard. But I'm going to let that go, because once I got older, I was already in an abusive marriage. I had a child. My father told me he had imagined me growing up being a high-powered accountant, traveling the country, working for all these different companies. And so that tells me somewhere there are visions and imaginings of me being a powerful and influential woman. And so I send my subconscious down in there to find those imaginings, those projections, so I can add those to my subconscious instead of the memories that I had there that were solely from my mother. A thing a lot of men like to say when they come across me is, oh, you've been hurt. That's why you're not open to relationships. Like, my past hurt is why I'm not open to their energetic vampirism. But I know that's not true. We did like a little personality test for me. I could fall in love with anybody. Remember, I was a Pollyanna? I only saw the good in anyone. Well, I could fall in love with anyone. But I don't want to. Because I don't need to be in relationship with somebody who can't treat me with respect. So yeah, my boundaries are going to be up, and I'm going to watch. Like that man who wanted to screw over his girlfriend and thought he could get with me. He was a perfect gentleman before that. He had big, healthy family, lots of support, decent perspective that I could share on things. No problem. But given enough time, the rest of his character came out. And I had a guy walk up to me in the park, started, asking me the usual questions. Are you single? And I told him, I said, I want to watch a person in a community for at least a year before I consider getting into a relationship with them. Because generally, it's at least a year that people can hold up a pretense. One guy is with, he impressed me because he came up to me. He said, I just want you to know that if you're open to it, I'm interested. And then he walked away. No lines, no games, nothing. And he was supportive of a family that had lots of kids. He'd buy them groceries and whatnot. Everybody around him liked him. He didn't drink or do drugs that I saw. At the time, I wasn't doing that. I was pregnant. Well, after a while, his resentment came out, and he informed me he missed his drugs, he missed his drinking, he missed his porn. He had quit it all just to get with me. And the reason he gave food and whatnot to that family with the children was because he felt those parents weren't doing a good enough job. They weren't good enough parents. And I used to feel insecure and bad about myself. Against ugly and dirty always comes out, because that's what my mother told me when I was younger. I was filthy, ugly, dirty, greasy, nasty, fat, whatever. But I would feel that way when men would talk about my boundaries being up. Because I've been hurt. Yeah, I learned my lesson. I've learned to reserve my openness and my blindness in love for where it's safe to be blind. I'm blind to like quirks, different preferences in food. Blind to whether or not they don't put the toilet seat down. All those petty things that tear up relationships, or that people project their discontent with their choices at. Those are the things we're supposed to be blind to when it comes to love. And you see that in long-lasting relationships. He's got his man cave. It used to be like a sewing room for the woman. And that's the kind of relationship I want. I used to always I just wish that I had fallen in love with a high school sweetheart, him and I against the world for life. It would have been so much easier. But hey, if I decided at some point in my soul's plan for life to save the best for last, I'm not going to feel bad about that. Because I see people who had that love young and early and then lost it in death. And maybe that's not the best thing, because I see them wanting that kind of relationship so desperately that they just fall into the first one that comes along and then try to project what they used to have into that, but is not that. So yeah, that's what life is showing me about me through the men around me. And now the women too. Because that woman, she's not mad at me. She's not holding it against me. And the people around me are no longer like, oh, you're fine. We're suffering. You need to too. They're actually getting irate Like one guy, he's like, you're a woman and you have no money in your pocket. I'm like, no, I got some change. He says, that's just not right. And I have a female friend who she'll get irate if, whatever pisses me off. She has the same sense of justice in her, the same vision for a community of gifting with like a common house in the center. And it's really cool. I'm still struggling, of course. But I'm getting to the roots of the problems. And step by step, I'm getting myself in a better place. And I'm taking Miss Newbie with me.